introduce myself again, Tony Boylan. Thank you to Jana and also to Simon for letting me speak. Wanted to talk a little bit about what's happening in other countries and how they're approaching this particular issue of lean. Obviously all manufacturing countries have big problems to be competitive, especially with the problems, as Simon was saying, with the Far East. And I was just thinking when Simon was speaking that in the UK there used to be between 25 and 30% of economic activity was manufacturing, and it's now down to about between 10 and 15%, and that has a major impact on balance of trade and things like that, and makes the economy a lot more difficult if you have less and less manufacturing, because manufacturing is a major part of any country's economy. So it is really important to think about how to maintain a manufacturing sector and a service sector that's very competitive with the rest of the world. So other countries have been thinking about this and how can they become more competitive. Looking at manufacturing, how can we support especially small manufacturers to become lean and become more innovative, and not just lean but innovation, new technology, and being able to develop new products. And already now the move has been now towards lean in things like services, public sector, and also in healthcare. Lean is having a huge impact in the US on healthcare. I've just got some figures here. Big problem with the healthcare industry in the US, and you've probably seen something in the news about the fact that this is all done, you don't have a public insurance, everyone has to have private insurance. If you go to the doctors, he doesn't ask you how you're feeling, he asks you how much money have you got. So it is a real problem, the health service in the US, and therefore they're putting a lot of emphasis on improving it. In the US, 20,000 incorrect drug prescriptions in 1 year, 500 incorrect operations, and 50 newborn babies dropped in each month. So they have to think about how can they be better in their health service, and that's one of the things they're thinking about in terms of lean. Now, if you remember, Jan was showing you some of the companies that we've visited while we've been here, and some of them we've revisited as well. And one of the companies or the organisations we visited was the Ventspils Library, which is a very, very nice library, a very well developed library. And you might ask the question, well, how do you make a library leaner? Do you have thinner books, or how do you do that? What can you do to make a library leaner? We looked through all the services that they provided, and they wanted to see how they could provide more services and better services. And what we were looking at, and one of the things that we've come up with a recommendation, is in terms of looking at their services from the customer point of view. Okay, they want to provide services, but are they really asking the customer, does he need them services, or what sort of services do they really need? So it's important. Lean is one of the things where you're really looking at things from the customer's point of view rather than your own ideas. It's really your end customer is the most important thing. What do they perceive? What would they like? Would they like better delivery? Would they like better quality? And perceiving things from their point of view, from the customer point of view. Okay, so I wanted to talk about some of the things that's happening in the rest of the world. One of the first countries to adopt a sort of lean manufacturing was over in the US, called the Manufacturing Extension Program. And as a result of that, there was a UK government official who'd seen the program over in the States and started to introduce it. The MEP in America was started 14 years ago, and in 2001 I was asked by this civil servant in London to look at how they could develop a manufacturing advisory service to introduce lean and innovation in the UK. So we came up with the Manufacturing Advisory Service, and we managed to get some government funding for that, but it was very much modelled on the American programme. So the government put some money into that programme. This particular logo for MAS was developed by a young friend of mine, and he wrote this logo in a day and then he forgot all about it. and a few weeks later he was driving in his car, and there was a big conference on MAS, and there was a huge roadside saying there's an MAS conference, and he couldn't believe that the little sketch that he'd made was now all over the country, this idea of manufacturing advisory service. So, but that was developed in the UK with regions. With being a large country, it was developed across 10 regions. So each region had to look after its own manufacturing base, and that's how it was organised. But each of the regions, they tended to compete with one another to try and see if they could offer the best service in terms of manufacturing. So we've got other countries who've developed this. I know the organisation in Singapore that developed it, and also in India. And as I say, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership in the US, which is a very big program. Also, we have Enterprise Estonia, which has announced a few months ago that they will have manufacturing advisory service, and they've already started to think about that. So as you can see, other countries are certainly thinking about it and trying to develop different sort of programs. We had a visitor in the UK from Australia, and they wanted to know about manufacturing advice and how we looking after small companies. And I was very lucky because I was invited to go out to Australia and to visit them and actually present what manufacturing advice and how we introduce lean and productivity and all these things into small companies. So I was asked by the government of Tasmania, that's this little island here underneath Australia, whether I would go out and make this presentation. So I packed my best swimming things. I thought I'll be surfing and doing all these things. But very interestingly, when I got there, it was -5 degrees. And I always imagined Australia was beaches and bikinis and things like that, but it's actually not. This is a very cold part of Australia. And I said, why is it so cold? He said, well, just below here is the Antarctic. So it's not very far from icebergs and penguins. So, and although this looks very small, Tasmania, it takes about a day to get from one side to the other, so it's quite a huge place. So I did a presentation on MAS, and then I was asked to go to Sydney and Melbourne, which again was very nice, and also present this idea. So now Australia, with all their states, they've got Victoria, and they've split it up because it's such a huge country, and they have a type of manufacturing advisory service that's running in Australia now. But it was very nice to go out there and very nice to see how they are looking at it. Because they, like all the other countries, have got massive problems in terms of imports from the Far East, low-cost imports, and causing problems to their manufacturing base. Okay, in the UK, this particular manufacturing advisory service, now, one of the things that governments are very keen on is the fact that if they put money into something, there will be some benefit, some value added. So they measure the value added in all the companies that were helped by MAS. And as you can see, there's a lot of people at the lowest level. Companies can ask, they can make technical inquiries and ask about how do I export, how do I do this, about legislation, simple inquiries. And then one of the main things that MAS does is this free diagnostic visit. Any company, any SME is in manufacturing can request an on-site review of a day's free review. And that is, then they get a report on their manufacturing operation. And what happens then is, if the company wants to make some changes themselves, then they can do it themselves. If they want to go deeper, then the government is prepared to pay half of the cost of the in-depth consultancy, and that might be something like 10 days of work to take it from the diagnostic to actually an in-depth where they make real changes to the way the company operates. Now this added value, I think this 955 million was against a cost of about 100 million. So the actual cost of the programme since 2002, when it started, has been about 100 million, and it's actually produced something like nearly 1 billion, which is about 10 times the investment from the government. So it has been very successful in that regard. As I said, it's very regional. The regions are competitive. Each of the regional centres is competing, but some regions are more agricultural, they don't have so much manufacturing, so they look like they're not doing well, but in actual fact they are doing probably quite well. One of the key things on MAS was we decided that when we go to do this review of a company and have a look at a company, that we don't sort of say, no, we're going to do lean with you, or we're going to do this. We say, we look at the company and we see it from their point of view. What are the problems that they have? Is it problems in manufacturing, productivity, their market? So we're not saying we only have one prescription for you. We're saying that we can do a lot of different things and quite a wide range of services. In actual fact, lean has been one of the major things we've been doing with companies because that's one of the simplest things. And to reiterate what Simon was saying, one of the critical things about lean is it doesn't cost. It doesn't cost very much to clean up your factory. You don't have to invest in huge machinery to do that. You can actually do it with very simple things and simple changes. And the same in the office, you can make very simple changes, very low cost changes, and it's not cost a lot of money, but yet it's made you a lot more efficient. Excuse me, I'll take some more. As I said, the government wanted to be sure that they get a return on their investment so that ministers can stand up in the parliament and say, we put in so much money, but in actual fact, the value added for the companies has been 10 times that, so that they can make these announcements. And every month or every 3 months, we had to tell the ministers what the results of this particular program was, so that they could make some announcement based on that. And one of the other critical things is measuring it. Measuring the type of things that were done, productivity improvements, defect reduction, that's a very important thing, space utilisation, things like on-time delivery, this is one of the things that was measured, stock turnover and OEE, which is overall equipment effectiveness. So those are the types of measures that were improved using these various techniques like lean, productivity improvements. But as I say, the government was very keen that we measure that, and that each company, in actual fact, the company had to say, yes, I agree that you have made savings, and then we recorded all those savings, and that was gone into the general, the global savings. But the company had to agree. It wasn't just that the consultant or the person who went to see the company said they've saved some money. They had to have proof that that money was actually saved. Just a little case study here on MAS. This is a company that was making boats, and they had this idea that they should try to build as many boats as they could. So they filled the factory with boats. Some of the part builds, some are almost finished, some are just started. And in actual fact, there was no room in the factory to do anything. So it was creating problems of space. And it was creating the fact that the productivity was low because everyone was confused about at what stage each one was. And the answer was not to put more into the factory, to put less in the factory. So if you see on this side, they've actually reduced the number of boats in progress, but they've done a lot more in terms of creating space, new guideways, everything is properly organised and laid out. And in actual fact, by having fewer things in progress, they actually reduced the hours, and they also increased the productivity by almost a third. So reduced inventory, better space utilisation, and a new build process which made it a lot simpler. You could see exactly what was happening with those particular boats that were being built. So it's not necessarily to fill the factory with things, it was more necessary to create space than you can work. Okay, any questions on that? That was a very interesting case. As I said, whenever a company had an intervention, this company had their first one-day diagnostic, and the person who went along to that company, and he saw that they needed to make these changes, and the company agreed then to pay part of the cost of the rest of the intervention, and all this was done in something around 10 days. so it was quite a short time scale. Obviously they had to do quite a bit of moving of things around, but it was achieved quite quickly, and the results and the impact was measured. And as I say, the client was then able to sign to say, yes, we have made a lot of savings by using these lean techniques. In the US, this particular program has been going since 1998, so some 14 years, and this has had a huge, huge investment. The US is not known for giving money to, it's a very much a commercial sort of country, in which everything is, money is the thing that drives it, most things in America. But the government, the American government, did realise that in order to be competitive, because they, like everyone else, is suffering from huge, huge imports, is that they had to put some investment, especially into their small businesses and small manufacturers. The US has a massive number of SME manufacturers all over the country. And in this particular program, it's billions of dollars that's been spent, and a lot of jobs have been created through that. And the other thing about jobs, one of the things the government in UK asked us to do was see how many jobs could be created by this new program. That's very difficult to create jobs, because that means you have to have improvements in investment, you have to have bigger sales and things like that. But one of the key things we said was, we're not going to increase the number of people, but at least we're going to mean that people are not losing employment, and unemployment is not going to grow. So it's retaining and sustaining people in work, so that they're not losing their jobs. And that's the same in America. It's really more to do with sustaining jobs and keeping people in employment. If you look at some of the figures of unemployment, especially manufacturing unemployment across Europe, you look at Spain and places like that where it's getting 20% unemployment. And this is a real massive problem, is unemployment, especially in manufacturing jobs. So actually retaining jobs, meaning that jobs aren't lost, is more important than trying to generate new jobs. As I said, this program started in 1998, and they put in something like $100 million of investment every year, and then they get partnership with each state, because there's a manufacturing extension program in the US. Within each state there is a department that deals with it. So they partner with the states and the federal government. Now, our friend Mr. Bush cut this program, tried to get rid of it altogether. He said it's not necessary, you know. He wanted to invest in some new weapons and things, you know. So he wanted to cut this program, but it's actually come back now, and there's been so much pressure from senators that they've actually brought the program back. And I think, if I'm right, President Obama has announced something like about 140 million of investment for this next year. So large amount of money going into that particular program in the States. And there's something in the US, they have something like I think it's about 1,400 trained advisors who go out to companies and try to help them. What they have done though now is the next phase is what they call of this 2012 manufacturing program is more to do with innovation, manufacturing innovation. They've looked at companies and how to improve companies and how to keep them competitive by using lean, but now they're looking at things like new product development and innovation. So the focus from this year from the American program is actually to go towards more towards innovation and new product development. Not to say that they will still not be doing all the other things, but one of the things that we did in our training was looking at lean in new product development, and in actual fact we did some exercises which is our friends at Toyota were able to develop a new car far quicker than any other company, and people went to see how they did this, and they couldn't quite understand how it was that they could shorten the development time on a new product so dramatically, and they were using lean in new product development. And so some of those techniques we've explained to the people we've been teaching, and yes, they've started to understand that you can actually compress timescales on new product and innovation development by using lean techniques. One other interesting aside is, as I said, we've revisited some of the companies, and we have some people from one of the companies here. We can already see changes. We've seen some companies and already they've started to think about lean. One of the electronics companies, they've now got some visual management boards. They're starting to look about how they can clean the factory, and some of the other companies. So already we're making very small steps, but in actual fact those companies are actually starting to make changes, the ones we initially visited a few weeks ago. They may seem very small changes, but in actual fact they are moving towards a leaner process. What's very critical is that everyone in the company is involved in this, and that one of the things we've been trying to teach people is about innovation and lean culture. In other words, that everyone in the company has the mindset of thinking we've got to improve. How do we improve? One of the programs in a very large company I was with was called Save a Second, and if any employee could make a suggestion or make some ideas to improve things by saving just 1 second, then you know, there was like a reward program for people who could come up with ideas that could save. So, but everyone was thinking then about how can I make my work and make the company more profitable by thinking about new ideas and innovation and using lean technology. So there's a lot to do with lean, which is to do with culture. It's not something that you can impose on people. You have to bring people into it, and you have to work as a team with everyone else in the company to make sure that they are also thinking about it all the time. Okay, one of the things which we do when we've been visiting factories and is to let the people who we were training see what are we looking for in terms of an ideal situation in a factory. How should a factory look? Should it look like this, very dark, everything cluttered up, or should it look like this, very well organised, very neat, all the aisles are very well laid out and things, the machines are all very well laid out? Is it safe? You know, obviously safety is a major problem these days. Is it clean and is it well lit? Or is it like this? And there are many factories all over the world that are like this, and factories in Latvia are not. You know, there are some factories like that, and with places, and they want to hide because they have so many, a lot of things lying around that shouldn't really be there. And the focus is not on keeping everywhere clear, it's more on sort of trying to produce something, but they leave things lying around which aren't really necessary. And as Simon was saying, one of the critical things on lean is to get rid of things that you don't use, so that you have a much better workspace, a much cleaner workspace. One of the other things about lean is in terms of visual management. People throughout a factory or throughout an office should be able to see what's happening and what's happening in the factory, what's happening in the office, and that it's a very clear what's going on. If you see some of the major automotive manufacturers, they have these sort of boards around the factory. Each team has a board where they record things, they record quality concerns. People can come and write on a board and say, I've got a problem with quality, and that is picked up by the management, and then changes can be made. So one of the key things on lean is this idea on visualize management, being able to see what's happening. So is your office like this, or is it organised in a way that you can see everything that's happening? Is everything very clear? And that's another key element of lean. No questions so far, so you're all happy with that? Another one is in terms of things like in storing things. Many factories are very bad at storing things, and they don't know where things are, they're not labelled, things are not in a good order. And if you look at this really horrible factory here, you have a mixture of oils, gas bottles, all sorts of things, oils and tar and paint and things like that, which is really, from a safety point of view, is really bad, but from a finding something point of view is also really bad. And so the idea is that in factories, you know where everything is. I always say to people, in terms of things like tools and toolboxes, the toolbox is probably the worst thing you have for being not lean, because every tool that you really want is at the bottom of the toolbox, so it takes you 5 minutes to find it. If you have your tools arranged in a better way and you can pick them up immediately, then that saves time. So if you see a man with a toolbox, you know that he's going to take a lot of time to find the correct tool, because it's for sure it's down at the bottom. As I say, a lot of to do with lean is to do with visual, making safe gangways between machinery so that you know that this is a safe place to walk. In other factories you don't know whether this is safe. It's also very dark, things are lying around. So these are the ideal situation. These are the type of factories that are, and there are some factories that, in Latvia that have set themselves out in a good way like this, very modern, very clean. And it's not difficult. You better lighting, you paint the floor, you make everything brighter and cleaner, and it's a better place to work, and people want to work there. If you're working in this place, I'm sure you don't want to go to work in the morning, whereas you could probably want to go to work in somewhere that's bright and clean and well lit. So, how can lean help Latvia become more competitive? As I said, most of the programs that I've seen, and most of the ones that have been developed, like the MAS and the MEP, they have a series of stages, a series of steps, and what we call levels of support for a company. And companies are very reluctant to spend money on some new scheme. They don't want to spend money. They're not sure what it's all about. They don't understand what is lean, what is innovation. I'm okay, I'm doing what I am. But we always say that any company or any organisation that's still doing the same thing it did 5 years ago with the same tools and the same equipment is not going forward, it's going down. Okay, so it could be that you become less competitive by the fact that you don't change. That's very important. If you stay as you are, in 5 years you won't be competitive. So to remain competitive and to be innovative, to be lean, you've got to be thinking about change. You've got to be thinking about everyone being involved in that change, the culture. So, and countries have copied this particular philosophy of these levels of support. The first level, obviously the simple level, is the help desk, where people can call from a company and say, I've got a problem with export or a license, or I've got a problem with some type of product that they're trying to find. They're looking for suppliers, and there is a skilled help desk which can offer help to them. One of the regions that was dealing with sort of help desk had a large number of inquiries from people who were looking for someone to supply something to them. They were looking for good suppliers that could provide quality, and the help desk was able to help those companies. The second thing is, and as I say, in most of the schemes, this idea of the free review. We'll come and look at your factory. We don't make judgment on you. We come and have a look at the factory or the office or this SME company, and we'll have a look at what you're doing and make some suggestions, and we'll give you an action plan. But we're not focusing on any particular thing. We might look at lean, we might look at innovation, we might look at a lot of things. Primarily, the focus would probably be on lean, because that's the simplest and the least cost option. So then this company will get as a result of that, will get a report, and they can start to think about, yes, I can implement this. Okay, you've given me some ideas, I'll do it myself. I don't need any more support. And if they want to do that, that's fine. And then other ones may move on to this. The other thing to provide for people, especially at a company level, is training, because although you may tell the manager that this company needs to be lean, as I said, it's very important to bring everyone involved in it. Everyone in the company should be involved in that lean transformation or that innovation. So everyone is thinking about how can I become more innovative, how can I become leaner, and how can I help the company to be more productive and make more profit. So as well as doing the review, it's very often necessary for the company to think about training its employees into understanding this, so that everyone goes out of the meeting thinking, okay, what can I do to help this company to change? I'm only an employee, I work in the factory, but how can I help to make this thing better for me? Because I want to keep my job and I want to have employment for a few years in the future. So the next level after this review, some organisation would say, or the company would say, yes, please give me some support, help me, and I'd like some in-depth support to carry out some changes. As we saw with the boat builder, this was done in a fairly short time, around 10 days of work to try and improve things, and they did get some real impact from that. So that sort of in-depth support with experts from outside plus the internal team working together. Things like one of the key things we talk about in lean is value and value stream mapping and seeing what is adding value. And the key thing on lean is that you try to reduce the non-value added part of anything activity and concentrate on the value adding. So all the things moving things around, changing things, those are not adding value. The only things that add value are the small improvements you make on a product when you're making something. So the idea of lean is always to split value added and non-value added activities. If I take an example from the health industry, the patient, this was a real case. The patient had 100 minutes of treatment by going to the doctors, then going to the hospital, then going back to the doctors and back to the hospital. 100 minutes of treatment, which is less than 2 hours, and that took 31 weeks. So in all that time was wasted time, in actual fact. What he needed was to get the answer straight away. And that's a real case where there's a lot of non-value added. One of the things you do find in a lot of the health, you have to wait in the emergency ward for maybe 2 hours before someone will see you. So if you get rid of that queue, the next person that comes in is seen straight away. So efficiency in lean means that you don't have these non-value added activities. Putting things down, picking things up in a factory, putting them on one side, getting some tools out of a box, these are not adding value. The things that add value are the real things that you do. So one of the key things you do is to see a value added, a value stream map. And all the trainees that have been in this particular program have all been asked to do a value stream map of their activities. What are the things that they do that add value and what are the things that don't add value? And then if you look at the current state, then you can start to look at a future state which you reduce this and get rid of these non-value added activities. That's one of the simplest techniques within lean, is the value stream. You can do it on anything. You can do it on the way you go to school, the way you go to work, everything you do. You can see what is adding value and what is not adding value. You see it in the office quite a lot, what's adding value, what's not adding value, and then try to reduce the amount of non-value added activities. So you've got this level here, which in most government programs is only part paid, so the company must pay some contribution towards that in-depth support. But that works very well. And we imagined when we started the manufacturing advisory service in UK that about 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 companies would go on from having a review to spend their own money on in-depth consultancy. As it happened, there was something like 1 in 3 companies decided they would put some they would be doing intervention and they would pay something cost towards that. So 1 in 3 companies that have had a review have actually gone on to spend their own money to make sure that they fulfill what the ideas that came out of this first review. As I said, companies are very reluctant to change and very reluctant to listen to outside. And it's only by doing this review and showing the company where it could make changes and improvements that you can actually see companies say, yes, I agree, that would be a good idea, and therefore I'd like to implement those changes. And the last thing really is for people who are looking for other types of intervention for sort of exports, that you can signpost them towards other types of activities for trade, export and finance and things like that. So all those type of activities and all those type of things have been done within these programs, and I personally think that it's something Latvia could really make an impact with that, by having this possibility that there would be a central help, there would be the possibility of reviews by experts, and that people could have a part-funded intervention to support that. And as I say, in other countries it has made an impact, and it is making an impact, and a lot of countries are taking up this idea of supporting their SMEs, because for sure if you don't support them and manufacturing starts to go down, then the economy of the country starts to go down. It has a major impact on that. Okay, well thank you very much, that's for me. I'm sure there are some questions, but
if we talk about the manufacturing companies or the production companies, then for me at least it's more or less a clear idea how the lean can help. But could you give us more examples on consultancy or service-oriented companies where lean management, method could be helpful?
Well, it is being used, as I say. One of the major ones is the health service, which is a non-manufacturing, but in other things like municipal governments and things like that, you know, sort of country governments and city governments, they're thinking about their processes and thinking of it from because lean is about value from the customer point of view. So to try and reduce the time, having assistance for people, and try and reduce the time to take them to provide a service to someone, you know, and it's really about being able to serve the customer, reducing the cost of serving the customer, and having a much slimmer process that does that. Because a lot of the time in a office environment or in a government environment, it's bureaucratic. Things lie on someone's desk for 3 days and then another 3 days on desk to be signed. So it's being able to reduce that and having a process which is compressed and with all the non-value added things taken out of it. So you can do that in any office. Any process that you have within an office, you can look at it and say, how long does it take, and what is adding value, and why does it take 5 days? Maybe I can do it in 1 day, sort of thing. So that's really how it works in the sort of non-manufacturing sector.
Can you also discuss this during your seminars or trainings, not just the manufacturing or production side, but also the service?
Yeah, we've gone through lean in service, and we did some quite a bit of work on lean in service, how you can look at that as well. Because many of the trainees were not from manufacturing; they were from a company that actually does websites, and they were thinking about what is their procedure, how do they get a customer, how do they deal with them, how long does it take, and how can they shorten that to be leaner in what they deliver. So a service company doing the same thing.
Can you give us an example? Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you give us some example, as you as a consultant, as I suppose, what you have to improve in your activities with the lean issues?
I think I have to retire. That's the good thing. I'm too old to be going around all this. In terms of consultancy, I think it's always to do with one of the things we try to tell people is that they should have a standard operating procedure, the way that they do things, that everyone in the company understands this. SOPs, we call them, standard operating procedures. So this is the way you do it, and it's very clearly laid out. And then if anyone new comes into the company, or you have a new member, then they see this is how we do it in this company, and there is a standard procedure for doing things, and that procedure is a lean procedure. In other words, we don't do anything by another way, we do it in a clear way, the way we organise ourselves. So standard operating procedures. But one of the key things about SOPs is that you get the people involved you don't say this is what you must do and go away and do it. You say, in actual fact, in some of the Japanese culture, they get the people who actually do the work to write the standard operating procedure and then get it agreed with the management. So they have an involvement in how they do something, and they are part of what is written as the standard way that the things are done.
But just to give you an example, in consultancy, if you take a consultant, an individual consultant, he will make files of his project, yeah, and these files go bigger and bigger, and some of the consultants, they keep everything, yeah, and at the end of the project they have 10 of these files and they say, this is the project. What? So much stuff? Yeah, I kept the brochures, I kept all the reports, I kept everything, yeah. Some other, they come up with this, yeah. What is this? Yeah, that's the contract and the final report. What do you need? Yeah, else, yeah. So, let's say when you have a standard operating procedures, it says it should be the proposal should be there, the contract should be there, the intermediate report should be there, and the final report should be there, and the approval of the client. Hey, also interesting. The final approval when he signs off and says it's okay. That last one in consultancy files you hardly see. Yeah, because I send the bill and hopefully he pays, and if he doesn't pay, then we'll see. Yeah. So what is easier at the end when you deliver your final report or your final presentation? Let's say with you it's very simple because you have a paper out of this. So go to the client and say, can you please sign now? Yeah. And if you do that at the same day when you deliver your final result, it's very simple. You will get a yes or a no. But if this is a month later, should we sign this? What is this? Etc. So standard operating procedures means that we tell in our company this is the way we handle things. Yeah.
I think the other critical thing, and I've just remembered it now. You know this very well. The company we were working in, we did a lot of consultancy projects, yeah. and we kept everything. You know, all the data on that was on a file, which was on the computer, the network, and our company thought, okay, we'll delete all these old files. You know, yes. We'll just have the files that are from this year. But then we got another consultancy project, and I said, I remember doing that about 2 years ago, almost identical. Now, where is the file for that? No, the IT department, people have got rid of that file, but it was so relevant. And one of the things, again, Toyota things, was that they have a massive knowledge base of all the things they've done. And you can refer to that, you know, if they're talking about the design or the engine or something, they have a massive database of all the information. So in a consultancy, don't forget anything you ever did. Keep a record of it, keep data on it, because for sure something very similar might come up, and then you go, okay, well, I've done this before, you know, maybe I can do it again, and don't delete the file.
But let's say that to say what's the difference, because there's also quality management people here. In quality management, and now I make a black and white picture. In quality management, often the quality manager is going with a headache for the company and asking how you do this, how you do that. Okay, I will tell you, okay, I will tell you, and then okay, already did it down. The quality manager is putting nicely in the handbook, and the handbook is never opened by anybody again because it wasn't necessary for our ISO certificate, and so what, you know? I do it my way. Yeah, but have you changed it? Yeah, so what? Yeah, but you should do it in the handbook. Ah, that was years ago. Yeah, but they will not accept the ISO. Write against something. So the idea with Lean is that you take your people together and say, we standardize the thing, yeah, and we are going to do it this way, point of view. If you're not going to do it, then I will force you to do it this way. It doesn't mean that you cannot change, but then we have to agree all together that we're going to change it, yeah, and then we change it. But if somebody else drops in new, comes here, and we have a handbook, and I deliver the handbook, and the next day, looking to what really happens, says, "No, okay, the handbook is useless because they do it completely different." Then, why do we make handbooks? Why do we have quality management? The whole point is, you agree the way to do it, and if you change, there can be good reason to change it. Then agree again together to change it. But as long as you work in a company, you work in an organization, and if you have standardized your working ways, your way of doing things, it means that they will happen to a lower cost level than if you all do it your own way, because I know it better. Yeah? Don't kill individualism and don't kill creativity. leave space always for flexible things. Yeah? People will always invent new things, they will come up with bright ideas, but the point is that you only really change it when you have agreed to change it.
How do you involve other consultants with a different competencies? Because some projects are relating with some competencies that you are not able to cover by yourself. Yeah. And how do you work with that?
I don't do things alone. I take other people.
No, it's just a question about that your project leader told that some people could come in the company and to analyze the procedures. Yeah. If they identify that there is a problem with the human resources, if they're able to give them some advice, you are able to.
Generally, the people who will do the first intervention will be a generalist, in other words. But if, for example, I know they had some specialists in sort of environmental or sort of, the sort of problems that you might have with in the environment, then they would bring someone in who was an expert in that. But in the initial discussion with a company, you don't know what their problem is. Okay. Very often a company says, I've got a problem, but in actual fact, when you go to visit the company, it's a different problem. It's a wider problem. And therefore you would, rather than be a generalist, you would bring in someone who's specialist in that particular area, whether it be something like environmental issues or things like that. So, or even things like purchasing and accounting issues. You could bring someone in that has some expertise, but generally the way we've operated is that we know enough about a little bit about everything, but we're not experts in the wider field. So you can look at a company and understand what their problems are and see them. So.
And what I also want to say very clearly is that I'm in favor always of a mixture of people from outside the country and inside the country. Let's say you need always to get really into all the details. You need people who speak the language locally. Yeah, it doesn't at a certain moment that's for everybody the same. If you have somebody from far away, at a certain moment it starts to feel a little bit like weird. Why you have this guy who's doing all these kind of things? Well, if it's somebody local and he can come back every week, or if it's necessary every day, and simply do the simple things, it works much smoother. So the combination is with somebody who's looking from the outside in, who has the experience and has the ideas how you can quickly improve that. But the follow-up, let's say, in time, should be done by somebody who is in the local environment well informed.